What's up, YouTube? I'm back to show you the disassembly of this LG L9. This will be a complete disassembly. You can see that the glass on this phone is cracked and shattered and definitely not in good condition. If you look around the sides of the frame here, you can see there's some big dings and dents, and the actual frame that holds the LCD looks like it has a crack in it. Hopefully it'll stay together in one piece as I take the LCD out of the frame of the phone. Here's my new glass that I purchased off of eBay for like 10, 15 bucks, something like that. And I also purchased a new bezel. It's in better condition than the one that I have for this phone, but it's not super great. Still some dings and scratches. But the goal is to show you how to disassemble it, so if you want to change out your glass, you can do so. First thing you're going to need for this is a Phillips head screwdriver. You're also, I like to use a pair of tweezers, somewhat helpful to help pull tape off and things like that. A couple of pry tools, some plastic pry tools. If you buy a new screen, usually you can get tools with it. You pay maybe just $1 or $2 more. I like to use a dental pick. A lot of people will use anything to pry up cable connectors. You can use a flathead screwdriver or a plastic pry tool as well. And I like to use this iSesamo screen remover to help me peel away the actual screen from the phone itself. And another tool that I will most likely use, but it's not necessarily a requirement for this project, would be a heat gun. We'll see as we get into it to see if I do need to use this to help pry it off. Most likely I will, but we'll take our time and see exactly what needs to happen. Alright, the first thing we need to do is go ahead and remove the battery cover off the back of this phone. So we're just going to go ahead and pry it off here from the corners. We're then going to need to take out our battery, which is prized up from the bottom here. We need to remove our SIM card and also our SD card here. The next thing that we're going to do is undo the screws around the sides of the bezel here. I believe there's a total of 7 or 8, I believe. Go around and take each one of them out. Now you can see that this phone does show that it has had water damage by the water damage marker there. It's still fully functional, but if you change your frame, you might be showing a non-water damaged phone. You're going to want to make sure if you're looking to resell the phone that you kind of list that, as the battery will show that water damage as well. Taking the screws out of the speaker assembly here at the bottom. Every once in a while a screw wants to kind of hang in there. You can go ahead and pry out with a pry tool or a dental pick. Alright, one that I missed right here along the side. So basically just removing all the screws that are showing on the back of the phone here. Any silver Phillips head screw that you see is going to want to be removed, so you can take the plastic bezel off the phone. The first one to take out is this bottom speaker portion, which is separate. There's 2 clips down here at the bottom. If you pry up towards the middle or on one of the side clips, it does help it pry out a little bit easier. Sometimes it can be a little bit tricky. I find this side is a little bit easier to help pull it out. And get one side started, and you can pry off this connector, little clip right in here. There we go. Now it is free. The next thing we're going to do is remove this black housing all the way around. This is a little bit tricky. We'll have to use a little bit of force. If you start at the bottom where you remove the speaker connector and slide your pry tool up, it is a little bit easier to pull off. You want to make sure you're using gentle pressure. You don't want to use a lot of force. Take off the buttons off the side here. That would be the power button. Then we're going to remove the volume button, which just pulls up and off. We're then going to start by prying up the connectors that hold down the phone here. We have connectors on the side. We'll start by prying up this connector right here first that houses the bottom portion of the phone to the logic board. We're then going to pry up this antenna cable here. These bottom ones can be a little bit tricky, and it doesn't actually have to come off, as you can remove it with a whole portion of the phone. So if it's really stubborn and it's hard to get off, you can just leave it. Not terrible if you have to not take it out. That's the speaker connector. Be prying up the LCD screen connector here. Perfect. The front-facing camera is next. And here is our rear-facing camera. You don't want to pry the last clip up just right here. Alright, we're looking good. With that done, you should be able to pry the logic board out. So you want to be careful of your rear-facing camera. Sometimes the clip can get in the way. You just want to make sure that you move it forward a little bit so you can wiggle the board free. The last thing is this earpiece here is part of the logic board. It is one assembly, so you're going to want to pry this out gently. If you go right from underneath where the camera is at, you can get a pretty good grip on the earpiece and pry it up. Now though, it is soldered to the logic board by just a couple of wires, so be careful. You don't want to pull too hard, as this would be something that's very hard to replace. Alright, now with the logic board out, we're going to go ahead and pry up the camera. If you go very gentle from the side of the camera, you can get a little bit of leverage here with a thin pry tool. And it is glued down. It has a little bit of a sticky adhesive below it. If you're going to reuse it, make sure that you try to keep this as intact as possible. Now, if you're just replacing your LCD and keeping the frame of your phone, you don't actually need to remove this. You can leave it in. The remainder of the things that I'm going to be pulling off of this would be just to change out the mid-body of the phone. A lot of these ribbon cables and things in here you can leave down. But I'm going to remove them as I want to change out the mid-phone. Alright, the next one we'll be prying up is this 3.5mm headphone jack here. That was the speaker cable we disconnected. It also has a little bit of sticky tape underneath it, so it takes a little bit of pry, a little bit of force to pry it up. And this last cable here has a little bit of tape underneath it. You want to be nice and careful. There is some gold, kind of this metal separating tape. I try to take it off nice and gentle. It's something that I want to try to reuse. You don't actually have to have it in your phone when you reassemble it. Depending upon how you remove it or what your phone comes with, you may not actually need to have it. But it does give some decent clearance from the logic board onto the mid-frame of your phone. So it is nice to keep. This is where my tweezers will come in handy. I'm going to try to help pry this off. Just got to get it started. It is pretty easy to tear. It's kind of like a fabric tape almost. Now, as you pull up this ribbon cable, it does have a little bit of flex, but you don't want to rip it, so be gentle when you're pulling it out. You can give it a little bit of force, but remember, nice gentle pressure. As long as you go even and pull upwards, it should come out for you. You just don't want to tear it. Alright, now we got our tape started here. We can use our tweezers to help pry it off. Alright, now this is the part of the LCD connector. The LCD and the glass on this phone are separate. They're actually not glued on with liquid optical adhesive, which does make this a lot easier to replace. Next we're going to do is go ahead and pry up this cable down the side. There is gold tape holding this down as well. You can just use your pry tool to pry the tape up on both sides here. And this is taped or has some sticky adhesive on the back side of it. So you want to pry it up. Maybe use a pry tool to help you get a little bit of leverage instead of just pulling directly on the ribbon cable. You want to tear any of the connections on the inside of the cable. Alright, now as you move down here into the bottom portion, it does get a lot stiffer with the glue. So take your time and using your pry tool, pry underneath it. It is a pretty solid piece of ribbon cable, but you don't want to do anything that would be detrimental to ripping it. Now before you pry it all the way up, I'm going to get it started here, but you also do need to take off your charging port screws to pry this cable up as well. Getting good separation off of the board here. Alright, there we go. We have the entire thing unconnected. The next thing we're going to do is remove these 3 screws. There's one here and then the 2 holding the charging port. Now make sure you keep your screws in the order that you take them out. I believe that one I just took out is slightly smaller than the rest of the screws within the phone, so you'll need to know exactly where that one goes. I'm taking out our last screw here. That'll undo the plastic cover for the charging port on your phone. It kind of latches in on a latch on the mid-frame. So as you're pulling this out, it may pop off, which is fine. You'll see the back of the charging port kind of clips in a little bit. And so does this cable. So as you remove it, you want to be nice and gentle. There we go. I went ahead and removed the plastic connector. And you'll see that the back of the charging port kind of fits in there, and you can pull it forward and out if you lift up. Alright, we're looking good. A lot of the components have been taken out and removed. If you look down the sides here, what you'll see is how this frame for the glass fits in. You're going to want to kind of pop these connectors out. Use something nice and thin, like this iAssessmo tool or one of those plastic opening tools. I find if you start on the sides, it gives you a pretty decent way to get in. You don't want to stick your opening tool too far in. Like I was saying, the LCD and the glass are separated on this, so you don't want to scratch your LCD as it's not glued together. So as I go along the side here, you can see I'm starting to get some separation. Excellent. Start to pry it out. Using my finger for a little bit of leverage, I'm going to go ahead and start popping the connectors off on this other side. Alright, there we go. We can go ahead and pull our glass out. Now you want to be careful of these ribbon cables at the top, as the one that holds the LCD onto the midframe is a little bit larger than the opening, so you have to kind of wiggle it through. As you remove it, the tape will get in the way, so I'm going to pull this tape off completely here. It does come off in 2 sections. Alright, went ahead and took that tape off. There's a little bit still left on there. So we're going to pull the glass portion out. You can see that my LCD is pulling forward with the glass. A lot of times you can pull them out at the same time. Save you a little bit of trouble here. I want to make sure that connector comes out, being nice and gentle not to rip it. The LCD connector is a little bit tricky. There we go. My mid-frame has been removed off of this. There's a front-facing camera here we're going to want to make sure we remove from this as well. It does have a little bit of adhesive holding it down, so be careful as you're prying it up. It can be a little tricky to get a nice angle on it. You want to use something that's a very pointy or very small pry tool to get this out without damaging it. Alright, removing that. And that should be all the components that we have in our phone. We did see this little grommet come out of the LCD. It's on right next to my opening tool. Just haven't caught it yet. I'm going to remove the home button here. There it is, that grommet. Now looking at this, see that the LCD will actually just kind of slide out here. Just being a little careful with it. We don't want to damage it in any way. Always be very gentle with your LCDs as they're very easy to crack. It's not glued together, but it was fairly just kind of vacuumed onto the glass there. So you can see this is the LCD. We're going to go ahead and set that aside. Now what we need to do next is separate the glass from the frame that holds the glass to the phone, those connectors. Now if you bought the glass with the frame, you will not need to do this part. So I bought the glass without to show you the complete way to do this. Using a small opening tool, you can get some separation between the glass and the housing. Sometimes they're easy to get out. This one looks like it's actually in there pretty good. I'm not getting enough separation to get my tool in there. Oh, here we go. We're starting to work it a little bit. That's not very much though. I'm a little concerned as there's a crack down the side of this in the housing. I can't tell if it goes all the way through. What we're going to do is we're going to give it a little bit of heat just to loosen the adhesive up on the frame, just around the sides here. Now, you don't want to give it too much heat. This is an actual heat gun and not a hair dryer, as it'll get very hot. So you can get to 800 degrees. We're just going to give it a few seconds to loosen the glue. You want it warm, but not too warm to actually touch. See that I'm starting to make a little bit better progress here with my opening tool. We're going to go ahead and start sliding it down. Excellent. Now that side is where the crack's at, so I'm going to try to do that last. And try to keep this frame intact. Here we go. We're looking pretty good so far. Right here is where it starts getting tricky. This is where that crack's at. There's a lot more tape on the upper side of this phone. It's very thick tape and glue. So if you're using a 3M double-sided tape, and in my reassembly you'll see me actually using 2 layers of tape to really get the length on this we're looking for. I'm trying to be very careful here. Try to get this glue to separate here a little bit for me. Try to cut it with my opening tool. There we go. Getting more separation. Try to be a little gentle down here. Alright, so it looks like the glue's starting to harden back up, so I'm going to try to give it a little bit more heat to really get the play that we're looking for to help us separate this glass off. Alright, making progress here. Making sure that I separate the adhesive completely from the frame. This does have really, really sticky, thick adhesive on this particular one. Making good progress down this side here. Alright, here we go. See, it's getting really thick. There's a lot of shatter down here on the bottom of this phone, so it actually gives it a lot of play. My adhesive started to cool down, so I'm going to go ahead and heat it back up again, try to get a lot of separation here. Not a ton of time, just enough to get it warmed up and give it a little bit more play as we move through the bottom of this phone here. Now the reason why I'm not giving it a ton of heat is that the frame is plastic and you will melt it and warp it if you give it too much heat. So it's hard to really define exactly how much heat you need, but enough to make your glue just pliable. You see that's pretty sticky, but it's starting to work off for me here. Start to cut it a little bit again. Alright. The frame is starting to get really tricky down here. Try to cut it with my dental tool. It is a pretty flexible frame. As long as you don't heat it up, you don't want to warp it. Oh, there's my crack. I should have given it more heat here. It should be alright. Technically I can buy just a new frame off of eBay. I just wanted to try to save myself a couple of bucks on this phone. So, learn my lesson here. Go ahead and heat it back up. That's not the end of the world. What I can do is, since it's a pretty clean crack, is actually just super glue it back together. And then the adhesive that I'll be using will help hold it to the LCD, and it'll clip back in. So this bottom portion is the tricky part, since this is where it's shattered. I know there's a crack in here, and I was looking at the back of it as well, which isn't super great. Try to get a little bit of separation here. Just kind of pull it with my dental pick, get that off. Alright, let's try again with my opening tool here. It does get a little tricky around these bottom area of the LCD, since it is so shattered. This will become the problem area for me. And there's my second crack that you just saw. Alright, the LCD is out, and you can see that the bottom of this frame is fractured where it actually shattered at. I might have been able to save it if I used a little bit more heat. If you do want to watch the reassembly, go ahead and click the link below, and you actually can watch me tape this up and show you the reassembly of this phone completely using the new glass. Thanks for watching.